Welcome back to another YouTube video. It's your tutor, Disha. And today I'll be working the CAPE Unit 2 Environmental Science, June 2021, Paper 2. Let's get right into it. Question 1. First part, define the term hydroponics. Hydroponics is one of the several sustainable agricultural methods that we spoke about in class. In fact, it is a method where plants are cultivated in nutrient solutions without using soil. Next part, state 2 features of sustainable agriculture. There were 4 features that we spoke about in class. So any one of these 2 will work: ecological integrity, economic viability, social equity, and adaptability. Next, suggest 2 reasons why aquaponics may be considered a sustainable agricultural practice. So to understand why it is a sustainable agricultural practice, you must know what aquaponics involves. So recall, aquaponics integrates aquaculture, which is the growing of fish and other aquatic animals, with hydroponics, which is the growing of plants without soil. So this is sustainable because plant nutrients can be derived from the fish excreta, and the excreta here can be used for fertilizers. It is sustainable because the use of pesticide is not encouraged. Plants can also act as biofilters and take up system effluent that would otherwise be discharged in the environment. After a long history cultivating monocrops in the Caribbean region, countries have diversified into many non-traditional crops. Table 1 shows the economic value derived from non-traditional crops in the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States sub-region for the period 2008 to 2012. So let us take a look at Table 1 here. Of course, what is an Envi paper without bothering us to draw a graph? Nevertheless, it says, using the grid on page 7, plot a bar graph showing the revenue derived for Dashin only over the 5-year period. I've extracted the data here for Dashin over the 5-year period, and I have constructed a bar graph here. Please remember to put a title below the figure. It's worth 1 mark. Label your axes and use an appropriate legend. The corresponding question here says, list 3 trends evident in Table 1. Let's go back to Table 1. We can see that the economic value of sweet potato in millions, in US millions, remain constant between the years 2008 to 2009, right? We can also see that the economic value for Dashin increased over the 4-year period here from 2008 to 2011, but it also decreased in 2012. That's a significant decrease, by the way. We can also see that the overall economic value derived in millions of Dashin was the highest. So Dashin here is the most valued plant, I would say. Next question. Briefly explain 2 reasons why cultivating non-traditional crops may contribute to food security in the Caribbean region. Instead of growing the traditional crops, promoting non-traditional crops makes more food available on the market, increasing the variety of food on the market. Secondly, what happens if there is an outbreak of a plant disease in the traditional crops, right? That could result in decline in yields of the traditional crop. If this happens, then the country can switch to a reliance on the non-traditional crops. That makes us more secure. All right, moving on to question 2. The Caribbean region has traditionally followed the plantation farming model of agriculture. Oh my God. Sorry, guys, my voice is going. I have been singing 3 days now. I've been singing, so I have no voice. Define the term plantation agriculture. So plantation agriculture was the first thing we spoke about in class in semester 1 when we looked at the various types of agriculture systems in the Caribbean. And it is defined as the large-scale production of crops on large plots of lands characterized by large scale of operation, large inputs of agrochemicals, labor, machinery, energy, and finances. Next question, state one crop which is cultivated in the Caribbean using this system. In my country, sugarcane and banana, they are cultivated on the plantation agricultural systems. Next question, discuss 2 impacts of the use of technology on plantation agriculture in the Caribbean region. So, first things first, if you have been following up with, and this is for the Jamaican students now, if you have been following up with what's going on in the agricultural industry, you would have recognized that drones are being used now. And with the use of drones, they help to collect data, analyze efficiency, and monitor the growth and quality of crops. Secondly, the use of bigger farm machineries reduces manual labor and increases productivity. And thirdly, the use of biotechnology improves genetic diversity and crop resistance to pests and diseases. Next, outline 2 ways in which plantation agriculture has impacted the natural environment of the Caribbean region. So recall when we were just defining plantation agriculture, we saw that it was characterized by large inputs of agrochemicals. The use of pollutants during agricultural practices can threaten the sustainable livelihood of communities in the Caribbean regions, right? Also, the clearing of land for agriculture results in habitat destruction and the loss of biodiversity. Next question. Figure 1 shows the production of agricultural products in a Caribbean country over the period 2010 to 2016. Take a minute to analyze what's going on in the graph. First part here says state the year in which the production of sugarcane was 50,000 metric tons. Right? So looking at the graph here, which year was the production of sugarcane 50,000 metric tons? All right, so if this is 200,000, then half of this is 100,000 here, right? So this would be 50,000 right here. So looking at this, it is 2016 that had 50,000 metric tons. Let's use the data presented in figure 1 to estimate the total production from agricultural products in 2012. So looking at the graph here again, it would have been somewhere around 690,000 tons. Part 3, use the data presented in figure 1 on page 11 to predict the total production of agricultural products in 2017. And this would have been roughly 785,000 tons. Part D suggests 2 reasons why there was an increase in the production of agro-processed goods over the 7-year period. Got the key for agro-processing, and you can see here that it increased from 2010 to 2016. So why was this happening? So it could be that the farmers recognized that creating agro-products resulted in year-round availability of foods, right? Thus reducing spoilage. Secondly, the farmers could recognize that agro-processing could give them more money, right? It could create more jobs if they farm those local community groups or cooperatives, right? It could generate more income on top of what they're making from agricultural production. Moving on to module 2, question 3, it says figure 2 shows the sequence of energy conversion that occurs when a lamp is plugged into a wall socket and turned on. First question, name the types of energy at 1, 2, and 3 involved in the energy conversion process. So here at 1, what is happening? We're seeing that current is flowing through the device. We'd say that this is electrical energy. 2, electrical energy is converted to light energy, right? Because that's the whole goal of this lamp. Once light energy is produced, then you're going to have heat energy being produced also. Explain why one of the types of energy labeled on the diagram is usually considered unwanted. It could have never been the electrical and it could have never been the light, right? Because both of them are important here. And pretty much this heat energy here generated here is unwanted. It is wasted. This energy could have been used for something else, right? So this decreased the efficiency of this lamp. Next question, state 2 environmental impacts of energy use in the Caribbean. What were the major environmental impacts that we spoke about in class? We spoke about global warming. We spoke about pollution. We spoke about habitat destruction. Then the corresponding question here says, discuss how energy use can result in one of the environmental impacts stated in B1. So choosing the easiest one here, global warming. We know that the Caribbean is a big consumer of fossil fuels. And when we combust the fossil fuels, they release large amounts of carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, they trap heat in our atmosphere, causing global warming. See, figure 3 shows a breakdown of the cost to society of hard coal-fired electricity generating power plant. So the figure 3 and answer the following questions. All right. Explain why, in terms of energy production, the depletion of energy resources is classified as a cost to society. So the depletion of energy resources is classified as a cost to society because what will happen is our Caribbean governments, they will have to use money to seek out and implement other alternative sources of energy. And leading up to depletion, as the resources get scarce, prices will increase, and that affects the livelihood of the Caribbean people. Next question, calculate the total cost to society of the particulate matter formation in a hard coal-fired power plant. Express this value as a percentage. So let's go back to the graph. They want us to calculate the total cost to society of particulate matter. So here's the key, and here is the color or the indicator for particulate matter formation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Particulate matter formation costs the society 10 billion euros, right? But they don't want us to just write 10 billion euros like that. They want us to express it as a percentage. So to do that, we must find the entire cost to society of energy production. So we get here 41, 42. We get about 40. What? No. We get around 42.4. They're about 42.4. Sorry about that. We divide 10 into 42.4 multiplied by 100 divided by 1, and we will arrive here at 23.53%. All right, moving on to question 4. List 3 types of alternative energy sources other than geothermal energy. All right, there were several that we spoke about in class. We spoke about wave, tidal, or ocean, wind energy, hydroelectric energy. He says, in tropical environments, geothermal energy can be used to cool our homes. Explain how this works by fully annotating the diagram. The air or vapor, whatever form it is taken away from the home, right? It goes down into an underground loop system where the heat is, look at the arrows, the heat is radiated into the cooler earth, right? Because underground, the earth, the temperature of the earth is constant. So it's radiated out, right? Once that happens, the cooler air is returned to the house. And at 4 here, the cooler air is circulated through the house, right? Cooling the house as well as reabsorbing heat again to start the process again. Table 2 shows the electricity generation in 3 Caribbean countries from 2010 to 2014. Study the data in Table 2 carefully and answer the following questions. It says sketch a line graph in the space below to illustrate the data presented in Table 2. Here, I have extracted the data from the table and used my Excel app to create a beautiful graph here. Students, I can't stress enough the importance of putting your title below the graph, right? So this is about figure 2 now, right? Figure 2, electricity generation in 3 countries over a 5-year period. It says use the data in table 2 to state one trend that is shared by all 3 Caribbean countries. What are you noticing here? If you look at the figures, for all the 3 countries, electricity generation is increasing as we go from 2010 to 2014, right? Next question. The electricity generation values presented in table 2 are quite low. Duh. 2 factors that affect electricity generation capacity are demand patterns and economic costs. Explain how demand patterns and economic costs may impact electricity generation in these 3 Caribbean countries. So something to note about these 3 Caribbean countries, let's go back to the table. Something to note about these 3 Caribbean countries is that they are what we call countries of the Lesser Antilles, or small islands rather. Right, so the population of these countries combined is below 1 million people. So one would expect that the demand pattern would not be high for electricity generation, right? That's why the figures are so low, right? And when it comes down to economic costs, recall that there are no fossil fuel reserves in these countries up to date, right? So these countries would rely on importation of oil and natural gas. So this again affects the electricity generation. Moving on to module 3, dispersants are chemicals that are used to help to clean up oil spills in the ocean. When a dispersant is sprayed on oil, it causes the oil to break up into smaller droplets that are more easily scattered. Company would like to use a new non-toxic dispersant in a Caribbean country and applied the chemicals division in the government for permission. The scientists in the division are concerned about the chemical because they think it may have synergistic effects. What is meant by the term synergistic effects? So synergistic effects describe a phenomenon where 2 substances interact, resulting in an overall effect that is greater than the sum of individual effects of any of them. Explain the impact of the synergistic effect on the environment when a dispersant is sprayed on an oil spill to clean it up. Recall that dispersants are the chemicals that are sprayed on a surface, right, of oil to break down the oil into smaller droplets. that readily mix with the water. Dispersants make oil spill less visible. Dispersants also hazardous for the marine, for the aquatic animals and plants too in the aquatic ecosystem. Figure 5 illustrates the total amount of oil spilled from tankers worldwide. B. Figure 5 illustrates the total amount of oil spilled from tankers worldwide each decade from the 1970s to 2010. Study the figure carefully and answer the following questions. Describe the general trend of the data shown in figure 5. Look at figure 5. We're seeing that, firstly, the amount of oil spilled from tankers was highest in the 1970s, right? During that 10-year period. And then we can see that overall, there was a decrease in the amount of oil spilled from tankers as you move throughout the decades. Next question, calculate the difference in the volume of oil spilled from tankers between the 1970s and the 1980s. So let's just look at the graph. 1970s, the amount of oil spilled from tankers in 1,000 tons is 3,200, right? And then for 1980s, it's 1,200. All we need to do now to find the difference is to subtract the 3,200 from the 1,200, and here we'll get 2,000 tons. Next question, discuss one impact that an oil spill would have on the economy of a Caribbean country. About Trinidad and Tobago, because you know that they have oil, right? They have oil, so they are more prone to an oil spill. So what if Trinidad and Tobago had an oil spill? What would be the economic impacts there, right? So the economy could have been impacted in that there could be the loss of aquatic animals, right? Especially fishes, decreasing their biodiversity. And this may lead to shortages on the fish market, which in turn leads to higher food prices. Next, at a school debate, you are asked to justify why preventing an oil spill is more effective than cleaning up a spill that has occurred. Discuss one argument to support this opinion. So this is pretty much straightforward. Performing preventative measures are important in preventing an oil spill because it reduces the possibility of an actual one, which we know is detrimental to the environment. It causes fish kills, depletes the water quality, and we just saw how it affects the economy, right? So preventing is much, much more effective. Figure 6 shows a farm ecosystem where pesticides are sprayed onto crops to control pests. Study figure 6 carefully to answer the following questions. Take a look at figure 6. You're seeing a farm ecosystem where pesticides are sprayed. Okay. It says identify any 3 receptors for the pesticide that was sprayed on the farm in figure 6. Look at figure 6. What are the receptors? So the receptors are the organisms that could be exposed at any time to the pesticides. So the cattle egret here, the cabbages, the lizards, and the bugs, receptors for the pesticides. Next, it says define the term biomagnification. So biomagnification is the accumulation of a pollutant in increasing concentrations as it moves from lower to higher trophic levels in a food chain or a food web. Next question, it says in figure 6, the numbers in brackets refers to the concentration of the pesticide that is found in each organism. Using this information, draw a flow chart to illustrate the concept of biomagnification on the farm. Let's go back to figure 6. All right, what we notice about figure 6 now is that the cattle egret had the highest amount of pesticide accumulated. So 15 parts per million for the cattle egret, then 3 parts per million for the lizard, then 0.5 parts per million for the bugs, and 0.2 parts per million for the cabbages. Okay, let's construct our flow chart. So we have here the cabbage going to the bugs, going to the lizard, going to the cattle egret here. And then the next part of the question says the farmer on the farm in figure 6 is concerned about pesticides getting into the stream. Explain how pesticides may get into the stream, even though the farmer is careful about spraying only crops that are far from the stream. Farmer could have been doing wrong is that he could have been applying pesticides under windy conditions, causing spray or vapor to drift into the stream, right? What the farmer could also be doing wrong is that he could have been discarding unrinsed or what he considered empty containers into the nearby bushes, which, when you have an instance of heavy rainfall, those chemicals can be washed into the stream. Don states 3 steps that may be taken to determine whether the pesticide is entering the stream. They could obtain water samples and carry out analytical techniques like titration to test for pesticides. They could also obtain aquatic specimens like shrimps, right? And or fishes, and they use radiolabeled substances to detect the presence of pesticides. Extension officers could play a part here. They could obtain information from the farmer about where the pesticide was applied to determine if it was a direct pathway for the pesticide to enter into the stream. And next question, discuss one mitigative method to prevent pesticide pollution in the stream. So mitigative method here is that farmers could be educated by extension officers about pesticide storage and disposal. Farmers could also be educated by extension officers about organic farming and its advantages to the environment.